ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the final day of Star Wars for 100 Days, the ultimate fan countdown leading up to the release of Star Wars The Force Awakens. That's right, we are only 24 hours away from the midnight release of the 7th chapter in the greatest sci-fi saga of all time. And it's all been leading up to this moment right here, my review of Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. It's really hard to believe that tomorrow I'm going to see the sequel to Return of the Jedi, a movie from 1983. What was originally the end of the Star Wars saga is merely just a pit stop. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into the review. The story of Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, is set 1 year after Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Han Solo has just been encased in carbonite, taken by Boba Fett to Jabba's palace. Luke has been doing some secret Jedi training, has a brand new mechanical hand, and the Empire is getting ready for their biggest assault yet, as they finish production on the Death Star 2, which is even more powerful than the original Death Star. And that's saying a lot because that thing could destroy planets with a single blast. This film follows our heroes as they journey to the desert planet of Tatooine to save Han Solo from the evil gangster Jabba the Hutt. The Empire and the Rebels are gearing up for a massive confrontation. Han Solo and his team go to the forest moon of Endor where they encounter the Ewoks, which help them topple the Empire, and Luke Skywalker has his final confrontation with his father, Darth Vader, as well as the evil Emperor himself. Star Wars Episode 6 Return of the Jedi is one of the more emotionally charged chapters from the Star Wars series. We finally get to see Anakin Skywalker's story come to a close, and we also get to see the true beginnings of Luke Skywalker's story. I only say true beginnings because we have this brand new trilogy which is getting ready to come out, and we get to see what Luke has been doing over the course of the last 30 years. Really, this movie right here is a springboard for Star Wars The Force Awakens, which originally seemed like it was the end of the Star Wars saga. The Empire was defeated, everybody was happy, let's party with the Ewoks. But it's actually not going to be that easy. That being said, this movie right here is incredibly memorable. Deserts, swamps, forests, epic space battles, ridiculous aliens, and amazing lightsaber duels. This is one of the most incredible Star Wars films of all time. In fact, when I was a kid, this was my favorite Star Wars movie. It's only as I became older that I started to appreciate The Empire Strikes Back. But the reason that I loved Return of the Jedi so much as a child was because, frankly, the movie was having a lot of fun. If you thought the Mos Eisley Cantina scene was crazy from the original film, wait till you see Jabba's palace. And that's one of the best things about this movie. We actually have some brand new villains, as well as finally getting to see the build-up and reveal of Jabba the Hutt, who was teased since the original Star Wars film. Unless, of course, you're watching the special editions or the Blu-ray and they decide to show him in a weird, awkward CG scene with Han Solo. However, even that cannot diminish the amazingness of Jabba the Hutt. When you see this character for the very first time, you believe that he's real. He's a marvel of practical effects. Just the way the character moves and breathes and licks his lips with his nasty, disgusting tongue. The way his eyes contort and move around. He literally does seem like he's a real living being. And like I said, he's a marvel of practical effects. He was literally being controlled by upwards of 10 people at a time. And you can believe that when you see how massive and large he is when he appears on screen for the very first time. The thing about Jabba is that he's also a nefarious crime lord, and in many ways, sort of like the most extreme version of Don Corleone that you've ever seen. He even has this massive monster that he keeps in his castle that he just feeds his victims to. Jabba the Hutt is definitely one of the more crazy villains that we've seen from the series, and that's saying a lot because we have weird robotic guys with lightsabers and an old wizard dude who can shoot lightning from his hands. And yet, Jabba is still one of the more grounded villains from the entire series, but the whole opening act of Return of the Jedi is dedicated to the weirdness and ridiculousness of his palace, which is filled with some of the most crazy aliens you will see in the Star Wars universe, some of which only appear for just a couple of seconds and have amazing backstories to them. The Gamorrean guards, the spider droids, which have human brains inside of them, the Max Rebo band, who I like a lot more than the Cantina band from Star Wars, Twi'lek slave dancers, Boba Fett, They're all there. There's just so many memorable characters from Jabba's palace, and nearly every main character from the series gets to interact with him. In fact, the film opens up with C-3PO and R2-D2 very similar to the original Star Wars as they're going across the desert planet and they arrive at Jabba's palace. Then you have Leia showing up, then you have Luke showing up, and then they save Han Solo. But it all ends in this ridiculous action sequence, which is just so insane because Luke and his friends are about to be fed to this giant monster in the middle of the desert, which is known as the Sarlacc, which is basically just this giant pit filled with teeth. This all leads to this crazy extended action sequence where R2-D2 gives Luke Skywalker his brand new green lightsaber for the first time. You have Boba Fett who jumps into the battle trying to kill Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and Chewbacca. You have Princess Leia who is literally fighting against Jabba, wrapping her slave chains around his big fat neck and literally choking him to death. And if I must say, she's looking good doing it. Even Lando Calrissian returns to help out his good friend Han Solo. It's so great to see Lando in this movie. He even plays a really big role in the destruction of the Death Star at the very end of this movie. The opening act of the movie just completely blows your mind with its creativity, its big final explosion. Jabba the Hutt is dead. Boba Fett has been fed to a massive sand vagina creature in the middle of the desert. It's just a lot to take in for the opening act of this movie. The second act is where things start to slow down just a little bit, with Luke Skywalker actually returning to Dagobah and witnessing the death of Yoda. This is a scene that still makes me feel like I want to cry every single time that I watch it. The next part of the movie is all a build-up to the big final battle of the series. The rebels are getting all of their troops together, getting ready to have a big attack on the Death Star, where one group is going to go into space and attack the space station, the other group is going to go to the neighboring planet of the Death Star, which is the forest moon of Endor, so that they can take down their shields and destroy the entire Empire from the inside. This is where one of the more controversial elements of Return of the Jedi come into play, where we're finally introduced to the cute and lovable Ewoks. The Ewoks are these cute little teddy bear people who live on the planet of Endor, and they're basically like this old ancient tribe. They can't really speak any basic or English or anything whatsoever. They don't use any advanced weaponry. They live in huts and use spears and bows and arrows, which I honestly think is really cool how they have this ancient-like people take down the super technological empire. Now, honestly, I don't know why people don't like the Ewoks all that much. They never really bothered me. I always thought that they were really enduring characters. Maybe it's because I grew up with these movies, maybe it's because I saw them when I was at a really young age, but I really just don't think they're as bad as Jar Jar Binks by a long shot. Luke also decides that because he's endangering the mission because Vader can sense him, he decides to confront Vader himself and even turns himself over to him, and that leads to the biggest confrontation of the movie, where Luke and Vader have to fight each other because the Emperor, the evil Emperor Palpatine, is forcing them to. He's basically trying to make Luke Skywalker his brand new apprentice. And that leads us to the final part of the movie, which is just so cool. You have all of these amazing battles going on. You have Luke and Vader having this amazing lightsaber duel. You have Lando Calrissian and the Rebels attacking the Death Star, TIE fighters, and all of these massive Star Destroyers. And then you have Han Solo and the Ewoks battling against the Stormtroopers on the forest moon of Endor. All of these things are going on at once, and it only gets more intense as it goes on. And then, of course, there's the battle between Luke and Vader, which is constantly being egged on because of the Emperor, who's basically trying to bring out the darkness of Luke Skywalker. At the beginning of the battle, Luke is basically just defending from all of Darth Vader's attack, but halfway into the battle, Darth Vader starts to look into his mind and realizes that he has a sister by the name of Leia, also realizing that he indeed has a daughter. When he learns this fact, he tells Luke that if he won't turn to the dark side, perhaps Leia will. And this pisses Luke off, so much so that he manages to push Vader back and even cuts his hand off. And that leads to one of the biggest symbolic scenes of the entire film, where Vader is on the ground, nearly dead and defeated. His hand is missing. Luke looks up at his hand, which is now robotic and covered in a black glove, and realizes that he is slowly transforming into the thing he hates most, his father. And really, Luke Skywalker doesn't really hate his father so much as he's trying to bring him back to the light side of the Force, and he's also trying to oppose the Emperor himself by claiming that he's a Jedi just like his father. The Emperor is not going to have this, however, and decides to electrocute him with some Force lightning, and basically reclaiming Darth Vader as his old apprentice. However, Darth Vader is completely conflicted by these events and decides to pick up the Emperor and toss him over this edge right to his death. This scene in the original Return of the Jedi was my favorite scene from the entire movie, because Vader doesn't say a word the entire time, but you can feel all of his emotions while he's doing this, while he's picking up the Emperor, while he's watching his son being killed right in front of him. This, of course, was completely ruined in the Blu-ray versions of the film, where they decided to have Vader go, "No!" As the Emperor is defeated, Han Solo and his team deactivate the shields of the Death Star. Lando and his team fly in, destroy the Death Star, getting a very big victory for the Rebels. The rest of the film follows Luke Skywalker and his team as they celebrate on the planet of Endor. Luke has a final goodbye to his father and even cremates him on the planet of Endor, which is a very important scene because this is supposedly where his body is going to be. However, in Star Wars The Force Awakens, Kylo Ren is actually in the possession of Darth Vader's burned helmet. How did this go down? We're just gonna have to wait to see in the new movie. There's also a number of just amazing action sequences from this film. Luke fighting against a giant monster, Luke and his team battling on Jabba's sail barge, which has a number of great effects with aliens using blasters, him using his lightsaber, Boba Fett is there, Jabba the frickin' Hutt, and it all ends in this massive, ridiculous explosion. You have the attack on the Death Star, which is definitely one of the better space battles that we've seen from the original trilogy. Lando piloting the Millennium Falcon is a lot of fun, and it's also a great way to use Lando Calrissian, because you almost didn't trust him at the end of Empire, but him and his team are responsible for destroying the Death Star, so I really think that redeems the character at the end of the day. Speaking of the characters themselves, they all go through their biggest transformations in these films, with Han Solo finally returning and sort of accepting everything that's going on. The power of the Force, the Empire, the fact that Leia is Luke's sister, so this way they can finally have a real relationship. Luke himself also goes through one of the biggest changes in this film, because over the course of a year, he's apparently been doing some hardcore Jedi training, because at the very beginning when you see him, he is decked out in a black cloak, green lightsaber, force choking guards left and right. It's really, really strange to see a Jedi actually using a force choke. So I love Return of the Jedi. It's one of my favorite Star Wars movies of all time. I'd say it's tied with the original Star Wars film for me, with Empire still being my favorite. We're going to have to wait and see what's going to happen with Force Awakens. What I will say is, thank you guys so much for joining me for this project. This has been one of the biggest video series that I've ever done. I've literally had a video coming out every single day, even on the holidays, 7 days a week. So this has been a massive undertaking, but I really wanted to share my love of the Star Wars universe with you guys and just give my thoughts about it, because I love this series. It's something that I've grown up with and something that I'm going to continue to grow up with thanks to the release of these brand new movies and the anthology series. And if it were up to me, Star Wars would go on forever. Tomorrow night, when I'm standing in line to see Star Wars The Force Awakens, I know that it's going to be an emotional affair. Finally being reunited with some of my favorite characters, as well as getting to see some brand new ones who are going to carve their history in the Star Wars franchise. Even though Star Wars for 100 Days is done, I am going to do a review for Star Wars The Force Awakens, so make sure to stay tuned for that on Friday. That being said, I would love to hear from you guys. Are you fans of Star Wars Episode 6 Return of the Jedi? What's your favorite Star Wars movie? And what do you hope to see from Star Wars The Force Awakens? Please tell me in the comment section below. And remember, if you guys would like to see any of my previous Star Wars videos, there are 100 of them. Make sure to look for the playlist on our channel. Thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, the Force will be with you, always.